form a more perfect union.
Just all that.
House divided. I'm sure they can get ocean prison.
There was a lawyer once. His name was Francis Scott Key. He penned a song that I'm sure you're aware of. You've seen it. It's in most hymnals throughout our churches. It's called the national anthem. It is our song as an American. We go, however, to a ball game. We stand in our church services and we sing the words of that song, and they float over our minds and our lips, and we don't even realize what we're singing. Most of us have memorized it as a child, but we've never really thought about what it means. Let me tell you a story. Francis Scott Key was a lawyer in Baltimore. The colonies were engaged in vicious conflict with the mother country, Britain. Because of this conflict and the protractedness of it, they had accumulated prisoners on both sides. The American colonies had prisoners and the British had prisoners. And the American government initiated a move. They went to the British and they said, let us negotiate for the release of these prisoners. They said, we want to send a man out to discuss this with you. They were holding the American prisoners in boats about 1,000 yards offshore. And they said, we want to send a man by the name of Francis Scott Key. He will come out and negotiate to see if we can make a mutual exchange. On the appointed day, in a rowboat, he went out to this boat and he negotiated with the British officials. And they reached a conclusion that men could be exchanged on a one-for-one basis. Francis Scott Key, jubilant with the fact that he'd been successful, went down below in the boats, and what he found was a cargo hold full of humanity, men. And he said, men, I've got news for you tonight. You're free. He said, tonight I have negotiated successfully your return to the colonies. He said, you'll be taken out of this boat, out of this filth, out of your chains. As he went back up on board to arrange for their passage to the shore, the admiral came and he said, we have a slight problem. He said, we will still honor our commitment to release these men, but it'll be merely academic after tonight. It won't matter. And Francis Scott Key said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mr. Key, he said, tonight we have laid an ultimatum upon the colonies. Your people will either capitulate and lay down the colors of that flag that you think so much of, or you see that fort right over there, Fort Henry? He said, we're going to remove it from the face of the earth. He said, how are you going to do that? He said, if you will, scan the horizon of the sea. And as he looked, he could see hundreds of little dots. And he said, that's the entire British war fleet. He said, all of the gunpowder, all of the armament is being called upon to demolish that fort. It will be here within striking distance in a matter of about 2.5 hours. He said, the war is over. These men would be free anyway. He said, you can't shell that fort. He said, that's a large fort. He said, it's full of women and children. He says, it's predominantly not a military fort. He said, don't worry about it. They said, we've left them a way out. And he said, what's that? He said, do you see that flag way up on the rampart? He said, we have told them that if they will lower that flag, the shelling will stop immediately. And we'll know that they've surrendered, and you'll now be under British rule. Francis Scott Key went down below and told the men what was about to happen. And they said, how many ships? He said, hundreds. The ships got closer. Francis Scott Key went back up on top and he said, men, I'll shout down to you what's going on as we watch. As twilight began to fall, and as the haze hung over the ocean as it does at sunset, suddenly the British war fleet unleashed. He says the sound was deafening. There were so many guns that there were no reliefs. He said it was absolutely impossible to talk or hear. He said suddenly the sky, although dark, was suddenly lit. And he says from down below, all he could hear the men, the prisoners, saying was, tell us where the flag is. What have they done with the flag? Is the flag still flying over the rampart? Tell us. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the shelling, Every time the bomb would explode and it would be close to the flag, they could see the flag in the illuminated red glare of that bomb, and Francis Scott Key would report down to the men below, it's still up. It's not down. The admiral came and he said, your people are insane. He said, what's the matter with them? He said, don't they understand this is an impossible situation? Francis Scott Key said he remembered what George Washington had said. He said the thing that sets the American Christian apart from all other people in the world is he will die on his feet before he'll live on his knees. The admiral said, we have now instructed all of the guns to focus on the rampart to take that flag down. He said, we don't understand something. Our reconnaissance tells us that that flag has been hit directly again and again and again, and yet it's still flying. We don't understand that. But he said, now we're about to bring every gun for the next 3 hours to bear on that point. Francis Scott Key said the barrage was unmerciful. All that he could hear was the men down below praying. The prayer, God, keep that flag flying where we last saw it. The sunrise came. He said there was a heavy mist hanging over the land, but the rampart was tall enough. There stood the flag, completely nondescript, in shreds. The flagpole itself was at a crazy angle, but the flag was still at the top. Francis Scott Key went aboard and immediately went into Fort Henry to see what had happened. And what he'd found had happened was that that flagpole and that flag had suffered repetitious direct hits. And when hit had fallen, but men, fathers, who knew what it meant for that flag to be on the ground, although knowing that all of the British guns were trained on it, walked over and held it up humanly until they died. Their bodies were removed and others took their place. Francis Scott Key said what held that flagpole in place at that unusual angle were patriots' bodies. He penned the song, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. O'er the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet fly and wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? The debt was demanded. The price, it was paid."
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets break clear, the bombs bursting in air, still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
The American War of Independence was an 8-year-long war after which the 13 American colonies won their independence from Britain and went on to establish the United States of America. To give some context, we would have to go back to the 7 Years' War, as the cost of British victory against France left the British government deeply in debt. From their founding in the 1600s, the American colonies were largely left to govern themselves. Attempts by the British to raise revenue by taxing the colonies were met with heated protest among colonists, who resented their lack of representation in the British Parliament and demanded the same rights as other British subjects. Colonial resistance led to violence in 1770 when British soldiers opened fire, killing 5 men during the Boston Massacre. 3 years later, Bostonians boarded British ships and dumped their tea cargoes into Boston Harbor as an act of protest against British taxes known as the Boston Tea Party. The outraged British Parliament passed a series of punitive measures designed to reassert authority in Massachusetts. In response, a group of colonial delegates, including Washington, John, and Samuel Adams, met in Philadelphia to denounce taxation without representation, as well as the maintenance of the British Army in the colonies without their consent, but did not go so far as to demand independence. In April 1775, local militiamen clashed with British soldiers in Massachusetts, marking the start of the Revolutionary War. The Second Continental Congress, including new additions Benjamin Franklin and Jefferson, convened in Philadelphia and appointed Washington to create a Continental Army and oversee the capture of Boston. American enthusiasm gradually waned due to the dangers of the war, and colonies were compelled to entice soldiers who were mostly unexperienced, young, and poor men with offers of cash and land bounties. A key point of the American Revolution was the Congress' decision to transform the Continental Army into a standing army of soldiers doing long-term service rather than one-year enlistments and volunteering. Also, beginning in 1778, the Continental Army enlisted African Americans, a practice that Congress had initially forbidden. Although the Revolution's first major battle ended in British victory, it lent considerable encouragement to the revolutionary cause, as the less trained American forces inflicted heavy casualties on the British at the Battle of Bunker Hill. By 1776, a growing majority of Americans had come to favor independence, and on July 4th, the Continental Congress voted to adopt the Declaration of Independence, drafted by a 5-man committee including Franklin and John Adams and written mainly by Jefferson. Thomas Paine's pamphlet Common Sense, which was widely reprinted, significantly boosted public support for independence. The same month, the British government sent a large fleet, along with 34,000 troops, to New York, from which Washington was forced to retreat. Pushed across the Delaware River, Washington fought back with a surprise attack in Trenton and won another victory at Princeton to revive the rebels' hopes. One of the key moments during the American Revolution was the American victory under General Gates at the Battle of Saratoga, prompting France to enter the war openly on the American side. The American Revolution had become a world war as France and then Spain joined the colonies against Britain, to which they had bitterly lost territory at the conclusion of the 7 Years' War. Following Philadelphia's capture by the British Army, the American troops retreated and greatly benefited from training and discipline provided by the French. After failing to crush the rebellion in New England, the British turned their attention to the south and initially achieved multiple spectacular victories. In 1781, however, a joint Franco-American land and sea campaign forced the British to surrender in Yorktown, Virginia, as a French fleet prevented British reinforcement or evacuation. The Siege of Yorktown practically marked the end of the American Revolution, and 2 years later, Britain recognized the United States of America at the Treaty of Paris, making it the first nation to achieve independence from the British colonial empire. Washington would become the first American president, and 30 years later, Britain would enter into a new conflict with the US known as the War of 1812. Besides eliminating the formal nobility and recognizing the equal inheritance rights of daughters and widows, the American Revolution brought some radical changes at the time, such as replacing the imperial monarchy with an elected government system that didn't have a king. On the flip side, slaves who represented up to 30% of the American population were held as property and were not considered equal to whites. Furthermore, women couldn't vote, and neither could white men who did not have enough property.
In order to form a more perfect union. House divided together. That's where they can get ocean increasing.
To each other, our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor.
Discipline is the soul of an army. It makes small numbers form.
First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. Light Horse Harry Lee's words from the official eulogy of George Washington were once famous. Nowadays, we usually think of Washington as the granite figure on Mount Rushmore, or Gilbert Stuart's famous painting, solemn and distant. But at the time of the American Revolution, 43-year-old George Washington was in the prime of his life, battle-tested, strong, and vigorous. At 6 foot 2 inches, he was a natural leader of men. Washington did not write the Declaration of Independence, or the Constitution, or the Federalist Papers. Yet his defiant, inspiring, and commanding writings far outweigh those of his contemporaries. As a military general, he lost more battles than he won. Yet Washington fearlessly led an untrained army to defeat the greatest military power in the world. If the Declaration of Independence was an expression of the American mind, as Jefferson called it, George Washington was its embodiment. He brought the Revolution's principles to life, and in doing so brought this country into being. This was the man who founded America. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, near Pope's Creek in Westmoreland County, Virginia. The first of 6 children of Augustine and Mary Ball Washington. What he learned came mostly from self-study and practical experience. He knew the Bible and Shakespeare, read Seneca and Cicero, and studied history in the political writings of the day. As a young man, Washington was a surveyor and traveled extensively in the area west of the Appalachian Mountains. He wanted to join the British Navy, but his mother objected. At the age of 21, Washington sought a commission and was appointed by the British as a major in the militia. Later, as a lieutenant colonel, his regiment was sent to the Ohio Valley to challenge a French incursion. The resulting skirmishes marked the opening of the French and Indian War. Since he could advance no further in British ranks, being a colonial subject, Washington resigned his commission and instead volunteered. as an aide to General Edward Braddock, who led a British expedition to expel the French from Fort Duquesne. When they were ambushed and Braddock was mortally wounded, it was Washington, with 2 horses shot from under him and his clothes pierced by 4 musket balls, who rallied the panicked troops and formed a rear guard, allowing the remaining force to retreat. After that, he was appointed colonel of the Provincial Virginia Regiment, which made him the highest-ranking American military officer in the colony. In 1758, Washington was elected a member of the House of Burgesses. The next year, he married the young widow, Martha Custis, who would be his wife for the next 40 years. And they established their home at Mount Vernon. He served as a vestryman in their nearby Anglican parish. Washington had inherited slaves, and more came with his marriage. But he eventually opposed slavery, wished to see its abolition, and in his will, upon Martha's death, freed his slaves. As the colonial crisis heated up, Washington sponsored a series of resolutions denying the right of the British Parliament to tax the colonists, and along with George Mason, introduced the Fairfax Resolves, which closed Virginia's trade with England. In 1774, Washington was elected as a Virginia delegate to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia. After Lexington and Concord, Washington urged Congress to prepare for war. He attended sessions in his uniform to show that he was deadly serious. When Congress recognized the militia forces around Boston as a Continental Army, there was really no question who would be selected to command them. General Washington left Philadelphia just as news broke of the Battle of Bunker Hill. Once outside Boston, he immediately set out to force the British to battle or to leave, which they did after Washington had cannons placed on Dorchester Heights, threatening the British ships in Boston's harbor. Anticipating that the British would attack New York next, he swiftly moved his army there. It is often argued that Washington followed a Fabian strategy, modeled after the Roman general who defeated a superior enemy through a war of skirmishes and attrition. But Washington was also a bold general when the opportunity presented itself. After retreating across New Jersey, for instance, Washington executed a daring attack by crossing the icy Delaware River on December 26, 1776, with 2,000 men to attack Hessian mercenaries occupying Trenton. Washington then led his outnumbered Continental Army against British forces near Princeton, New Jersey. When his men wavered in the battle, Washington rode to the front lines, well within range of British muskets, to rally them in a counterattack that secured the victory. Those 2 battles, Trenton and Princeton, changed the momentum of the whole war. Washington's greatest strategic operation culminated in the last great battle of the American Revolution. The victory at Saratoga had induced the French to form a military alliance with the Americans, and that created a new opportunity. In 1781, Washington initially planned to attack British forces in New York City, but quickly saw a chance to seal a march on the enemy. He spread misinformation, forged documents, and kept watchfires burning while he secretly led 8,000 troops over 400 miles from New York to trap Lieutenant General Charles Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. Washington coordinated movements with both the French Army and Navy to prevent British naval reinforcement or evacuation, and orchestrated the formal siege that forced Cornwallis to surrender his entire army. That victory shattered British resolve to continue the war. Washington's greatest act as general occurred after Yorktown, but before the peace treaty of 1783. The Continental Army had not been paid consistently for years due to Congress's financial struggles, and the officers were frustrated by Congress's seeming ingratitude for their service. Some proposed drastic action, refusing to disband, or even marching on Philadelphia to threaten Congress. Washington called a general meeting and then showed up unexpectedly to speak to his officers. He denounced the mutinous talk as subversive, appealing to their patriotism and recalling the last words of the Declaration, "to your own sacred honor." Then, pulling out a pair of glasses to read a letter from Congress, he said, "Gentlemen, you'll permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have grown not only gray, but almost blind in the service of my country." The conspiracy immediately collapsed. Later that year, Washington's circular address to the states set off a series of events which culminated in the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Washington was elected its president. Be assured, future President James Monroe reminded another future president, Thomas Jefferson, his influence carried this government. Is it any wonder that Washington was unanimously elected to be the first president of the United States? The arc of Washington's statesmanship was complete. He had led his people from revolution through war to a constitutional republic. Twice during the Revolution, Washington was granted absolute power by Congress to do whatever was necessary for the cause. Twice, he gave that power back. When one of his colonels proposed that Washington be made a king, he rejected the idea in utter disgust. After the war, Washington resigned his military commission. After 2 terms as president, he resigned that too. The French Revolution ended in violence, the guillotine, and the wars of Napoleon. That the American Revolution did not was largely because of Washington, who sought an independent nation of self-governing people, living freely, to use his favorite biblical metaphor, under their own vine and fig tree. The moderation and virtue of a single character, Jefferson later reflected, probably prevented this revolution from being closed, as most others have been, by a subversion of that liberty it was intended to establish. When he resigned for the last time, Washington left his beloved country enduring advice in his farewell address: uphold the Constitution, be vigilant in protecting the liberty of all, guard the nation's independence, and above all, maintain the civic and moral character necessary for self-government. George Washington is Pater Patriae, the father of our country, but he never had children of his own. We are his children. Together, we must live up to this inheritance, especially now, on our nation's 250th birthday.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold. Sources.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. And there are even a few who say that it's true that communism is an evil system, but it permits us to make economic progress. Lass sie nach Berlin kommen. Let them come to Berlin. they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times.
The Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. These attacks continue as I speak. Ground forces are not engaged. This conflict started August 2nd when the dictator of Iraq invaded a small and helpless neighbor. Kuwait, a member of the Arab League and a member of the United Nations, was crushed, its people brutalized. 5 months ago, Saddam Hussein started this cruel war against Kuwait. Tonight, the battle has been joined.
Work here for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand. To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals: democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
And the world waited. July 20th, 1969. It is said that 500 million people gathered at TV sets around the world to wait for the first Earthling to set foot on the moon. Countless millions more listened on the radio to the voices from the moon.
This is Neil, radio check. Neil, this is Houston, loud and clear. Break, Buzz.
Never before had so many people been attuned to one event at one time.
July 16, 1969.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Americans crowd highways and beaches to witness the launch of Apollo 11 from the Kennedy Space Center. On board, astronauts Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin, and Neil Armstrong.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
From the Oval Office, President Nixon watches along with 600 million people worldwide.
We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
Biggest TV audience ever at that time. On July 20th, the world sees the first men, Americans, walk on the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hello, Neil and Buzz.
From the White House, the president congratulates the astronauts.
I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives.
The promise John Kennedy made at the start of the decade has been fulfilled. America has won the space race. It is Americans who show the world the view from the moon.
Thank you very much for coming here this evening. the North Atlantic Council met tonight to express its solidarity with the United States of America at this moment of great tragedy and mourning. Our deepest sympathy lies with the victims, their families, and all Americans. The NATO nations unanimously condemn these barbaric acts committed against a NATO member state. The mindless slaughter of so many innocent civilians is an unacceptable act of violence without precedent in the modern era. It underscores the urgency of intensifying the battle against terrorism, a battle that the NATO countries, indeed all civilized nations, must win. All allies stand united in their determination to combat this scourge. At this critical moment, the United States can rely on its 18 allies in North America and Europe for both assistance and for support. NATO solidarity remains the essence of our alliance. Our message to the people of the United States is that we are with you. Our message to those who perpetrated these unspeakable crimes is equally clear. You will not get away with it. On September the 12th, the North Atlantic Council met again in response to the appalling attacks perpetrated yesterday against the United States of America. The Council agreed that if it is determined that this attack was directed from abroad against the United States, it shall be regarded as an action covered by Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which states that an armed attack against one or more of the allies in Europe or in North America shall be considered an attack against them all.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts. On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. We offered our neighbors a hand, and we offered the wounded our blood. We reaffirmed our ties to each other and our love of community and country. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family.
From Times Square to Ground Zero to the White House, the familiar chant of USA, USA resonated as citizens learned that Osama bin Laden was dead. The announcement sparked immediate jubilation. In Times Square, people gathered around giant news tickers to see the latest updates and take in the moment they heard the world's most wanted terrorist was dead.
It's just amazing. We were walking out of a pizza joint and all of a sudden it was like we saw on the bar and the TV and everyone just glued.
At the White House, young Americans climbed trees, climbed light posts, donned American flags, and belted the national anthem.
The feeling out here is euphoric as thousands of Americans gather in front of the White House where just hours ago, U.S. President Barack Obama made the announcement that Osama bin Laden is dead.
For many, it became a moment of reflection, thinking back to the nearly 3,000 lives lost on September 11, 2001, an act of terror Osama bin Laden claimed responsibility for.
I think a lot of us have grown up with the memory of 9/11 and sort of with this constant notion of a threat and of danger of terrorism. So I think that this is a very triumphant moment for all of us.
Because we do not scare easily. We never bow. We never bend. We never break when confronted with crisis. No, we endure. We overcome. And we always, always, always move forward. That is the history of the journey of America. We are America, second to none. And we own the finish line.
As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart.
There's not going to be a President Donald Trump.
No threat will shake me. No enemy will intimidate me. I am your voice. I have never been more determined than I am today, and I will never back down. I am your retribution.
Are you ever scared?
I can't be scared.
Donald Trump is not the president of the United States. Take it to the bank. I guarantee it. All right.
I think that man will be president of the United States right about the time the spaceships come down filled with dinosaurs and red caves.
I had my choice of being here with you today or being on some magnificent beach. I would take you every single time.
One thing, I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to remind myself of a time when in spite of the way you were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property, remembering all the times you fought with me, I'm surprised it got so things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore. Not that you knew me back then, but it all comes back to me. You kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time when I
tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Fight, fight, fight.
Doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to explain in due time. All I know, time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day. The clock takes life away. It's so unreal. Didn't look out below. Watch the time go right out the window. Trying to hold on, but you didn't even know. Wasted it all just to watch you go. I kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time when I tried so hard.
I'm not supposed to be here tonight.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Honored to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Years from now, some of them may look back and ask themselves whether they've made the right choice, whether they've made the most of the opportunities they've been given. Together, we have the same mission. Over the course of your life, you will find that things are not always fair. You will find that things happen to you that you do not deserve and that are not always warranted. But you have to put your head down and fight, fight, fight. Never, ever, ever give up. Don't give in, don't back down, and never stop doing what you know is right. Nothing worth doing ever, ever, ever came easy. And the more righteous your fight, the more opposition that you will face. In your hearts are inscribed the values of service, sacrifice, and devotion. Now you must go forth into the world and turn your hopes and dreams into action. America has always been the land of dreams because America is a nation of true believers. When the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, they prayed. When the founders wrote the Declaration of Independence, they invoked our Creator 4 times. Because in America, we don't worship government, we worship God. It is why our currency proudly declares, "In God we trust." And it's why we proudly proclaim that we are one nation under God. The story of America is the story of an adventure that began with deep faith, big dreams, and humble beginnings. The next generation of American leaders never, ever give up. There'll be times in your life you'll want to quit. Never quit. Never stop fighting for what you believe in and for the people who care about you. Carry yourself with dignity and pride. Demand the best from yourself. The more people tell you it's not possible, that it can't be done, the more you should be absolutely determined to prove them wrong. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Relish the opportunity to be an outsider. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. You must keep pushing forward. And always have the courage to be yourself. America is better when people put their faith into action. Pray to God and follow His teachings. Today, each of you begins a new chapter as well. When your story goes from here, it will be defined by your vision, your perseverance, and your grit. You will build a future where we have the courage to chase our dreams no matter what the cynics and the doubters have to say. You will have the confidence to speak the hopes in your hearts and to express the love that stirs your souls. As long as you have pride in your beliefs, courage in your convictions, and faith in God, then you will not fail. As long as America remains true to its values, loyal to its citizens, and devoted to its Creator, then our best days are yet to come. May God bless the class of 2017. May God bless the United States of America. And I just want to let you know that God blesses you. And I want to just say, you are special in every way. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people. Their patriotism is quiet but deep. Their values sustain our national life. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We will maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be, knowing that if we do so, we have the best chance of never having to use that strength. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Well, I believe we, the Americans of today, are ready to act worthy of ourselves, ready to do what must be done to ensure happiness and liberty for ourselves, our children, and our children's children. We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second: surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than death, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our honored dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn they're spirits, not animals. He said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. Have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. We choose to go to the moon.
You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery.